Imagine standing in the shadow of a towering ancient wall, its stones whispering secrets from a time long forgotten. For thousands of years, China's history has been a tapestry of brilliance, mystery, and innovations so advanced they still leave modern scientists in awe. This is a land where emperors ruled with divine authority, where scholars unlocked the secrets of the universe, and where ordinary people achieved the extraordinary, often leaving behind clues that defy explanation. Today, we're peeling back the layers of time to reveal 25 ancient Chinese secrets so astonishing, they'll challenge everything you thought you knew about the past. Think about this for a moment. While Europe was still in its medieval era, China had already invented paper, gunpowder, and the compass technologies that would reshape the world. But what if I told you those are just the tip of the iceberg? Hidden in the annals of history are forgotten marvels, elixirs that promised immortality, lost mechanical wonders, and cryptic texts containing knowledge far ahead of their time. Some of these discoveries were so groundbreaking they were deliberately concealed or misunderstood for centuries, and now we're bringing them to light. What makes these secrets so captivating isn't just their age, it's the sheer ingenuity behind them. From the intricate precision of the ancient seismograph to the eerie predictions buried in oracle bones, each revelation offers a glimpse into a civilization that saw the future long before the rest of the world caught up. How did they do it? What were they hiding? And why do some of these mysteries still baffle experts today? Join us as we journey through time, unearthing the astonishing truths buried beneath the dust of centuries. By the end of this exploration, you'll never look at history the same way again. Beneath the dry earth of China's Shaanxi province lies an underground empire frozen in time. A silent legion of over 8,000 terracotta soldiers, each one painstakingly crafted with astonishing detail. Discovered by farmers in 1974, this army wasn't built for conquest in our world, but for a far more mysterious mission: to guard China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, in the afterlife. The sheer scale of this necropolis is staggering. Covering an area larger than 20 football fields, the mausoleum complex contains not just warriors but chariots, horses, and even acrobats, all buried to serve their ruler beyond death. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. No two soldiers are alike. Every face, every expression, even the intricate braiding of their armor plates varies, as if real individuals were immortalized in clay. How did ancient artisans achieve such precision? Some scholars believe they modeled the army after actual soldiers, capturing the diversity of Qin's real-life forces down to regional hairstyles and ethnic features. Yet the most chilling secrets may still lie hidden. Only 4 pits have been excavated so far, and ancient texts hint at an entire underground replica of the emperor's empire. Rivers of flowing mercury, palaces of bronze, and booby traps waiting for intruders. Modern scans reveal unexplained metallic chambers beneath the tomb's central mound, fueling theories that Qin's burial site could rewrite history. Was this just a show of power, or did the emperor truly believe these clay sentinels would awaken to defend him? The Terracotta Army isn't just a relic. It's a doorway to the ambitions and fears of a man who united China but couldn't conquer mortality. And with most of the site still untouched, who knows what other secrets might emerge when we dare to dig deeper. Now picture a different kind of treasure, not buried in earth but simmering in crucibles, a glittering liquid that promised to defy death itself. Ancient Chinese alchemists weren't just mixing potions. They were pioneering the world's earliest chemistry labs in their relentless pursuit of immortality. Their experiments with mercury, gold, and mysterious elixirs didn't just fail. They accidentally birthed breakthroughs that would shape science for centuries. Take the infamous case of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Convinced that mercury held the key to eternal life, he consumed elaborate elixirs laced with the toxic metal, even lining his tomb with rivers of liquid mercury to safeguard his journey into eternity. Modern tests confirm the soil around his burial mound still contains dangerously high mercury levels, proof of the elaborate, deadly obsession that may have ultimately poisoned him. But here's the twist. While these alchemists never found everlasting life, their meticulous records of reactions and metallurgy became the foundation for gunpowder, acupuncture alloys, and early medicinal compounds. Their manuscripts reveal something even more startling. Hidden among fantastical recipes were precise observations about chemical changes, the transformation of cinnabar into mercury, the way certain minerals resisted corrosion. These weren't just mystics, they were proto-scientists documenting principles modern chemistry wouldn't formalize for another 1,000 years, and perhaps most haunting of all, some of their failed elixirs contained trace ingredients we now recognize as early antibiotics, hinting that their intuition about longevity wasn't entirely misguided. The legacy of these alchemists isn't just in what they sought, but in what they left behind, a trail of brilliant accidents that propelled human knowledge forward. Their quest may have been doomed, but their methods quietly laid the groundwork for everything from pharmaceuticals to metallurgy. And that's the real immortality they achieved, not through elixirs, but through ideas that outlasted empires. Deep beneath the tranquil waters of Qiandao Lake lies a silent metropolis frozen in time, Xicheng, the legendary Lion City, submerged for over half a century yet astonishingly intact. Built during the Eastern Han Dynasty around 2,000 years ago, this wasn't just another ancient settlement. It was a masterpiece of urban planning with 5 towering gateways, intricate stone carvings of lions and phoenixes, and streets wide enough for 8 horses to pass abreast. Then, in 1959, it vanished beneath the waves, not by catastrophe but by deliberate design. When the Chinese government built the Xinan River hydropower station, they created a reservoir that drowned Xicheng under 40 meters of water. What's extraordinary isn't just its preservation, it's how the lake's cold, sediment-free depths became a time capsule. Divers who have ventured into this underwater realm describe a scene straight from a myth: grand archways still standing, wooden beams uncorroded, and stone staircases leading to nowhere. Even the delicate carvings on temples and homes remain crisp, untouched by algae or erosion. But why flood such a treasure? The answer lies in progress. At the time, electrification outweighed historical preservation, and few realized what they were sacrificing. Now, Xicheng's eerie beauty has earned it the nickname China's Atlantis, though unlike Atlantis, we know exactly where it is and what was lost. Local legends speak of a city so prosperous, its wealth drew envy from the gods. Some villagers whisper that the lake's occasional ripples on windless nights are the echoes of submerged temple bells. Modern expeditions have mapped less than 10% of the site, leaving tantalizing questions. What scrolls might lie in its undisturbed libraries? What stories do its untouched murals tell? Unlike Pompeii, preserved by volcanic ash, Xicheng's watery tomb kept it free from human interference, making it one of archaeology's purest windows into imperial China. As technology advances, who knows what secrets these silent streets might yet surrender? Centuries before the West developed its first crude seismographs, a brilliant Chinese astronomer and inventor named Zhang Heng unveiled a device that would shake the foundations of scientific thought, literally. In the year 132, during the Han Dynasty, he presented the court with an object that seemed plucked from the future, a towering bronze vessel adorned with 8 dragons, each clutching a metal ball above the open mouths of 8 corresponding toads. This wasn't just art, it was the world's first earthquake detector, a machine so precise it could sense tremors from hundreds of miles away. The mechanics were deceptively simple yet revolutionary. Inside the vessel hung a pendulum, delicately balanced to swing at the slightest tremor. When seismic waves rippled through the earth, the pendulum would knock a lever inside one of the dragons, releasing its ball into the toad's mouth below. The direction of the fallen ball pointed to the quake's epicenter, while the act of falling confirmed the event itself. Historical records claim it once detected an earthquake so distant. Messengers arrived days later to report devastation in a province the court hadn't yet heard from, proof the device worked with eerie accuracy. What's truly staggering is how much was lost. Zhang Heng's original seismoscope vanished into history, likely destroyed in one of China's many upheavals. For centuries, scholars debated whether it was even possible, dismissing ancient accounts as myth, until modern engineers reconstructed it using period-appropriate materials. To their shock, the replica detected simulated quakes with startling reliability, proving the design wasn't just plausible but brilliant. The secret lay in its inertial pendulum, a concept Europe wouldn't grasp for another 1500 years. Why did such groundbreaking technology fade into obscurity? Part of the answer lies in Imperial China's fraught relationship with innovation. Zhang Heng's device was celebrated, but his manuscripts weren't widely preserved. Later dynasties, more focused on philosophy than mechanics, let his techniques slip away. And yet, buried in the annals of history, this bronze marvel stands as a testament to a truth we often forget, that ancient minds were just as capable of flashes of genius as our own. The real mystery isn't how Zhang Heng built his seismoscope, it's what else his era might have achieved, if only those secrets hadn't been swallowed by time. The Great Wall of China stands as one of humanity's most awe-inspiring feats, a serpentine fortress winding across mountains and deserts, visible even from space. But behind its majestic facade lies a history far darker than most dare to imagine. Long romanticized as a symbol of perseverance, the wall's construction was a brutal saga of forced labor, crushed bones, and whispered legends of workers entombed within its stones. Start with the chilling myth that haunts its corridors, the tale that the bodies of dead laborers were buried directly into the wall's foundations. While archaeologists haven't found mass graves, the truth isn't far off. Historical records describe workers toiling under whips, dying from exhaustion or exposure, their bodies hastily disposed of in nearby trenches. Some sections reveal human remains in adjacent pits, fueling the macabre idea that the wall was quite literally built on suffering. The real horror, an estimated 1 million perished during its 2,000-year construction, more casualties than many wars. Yet the greatest irony is this: for all its sacrifice, the wall failed spectacularly at its core purpose. Built to repel nomadic invaders like the Mongols, its defenses were repeatedly breached. Genghis Khan's cavalry rode straight through its gaps in the 13th century, exploiting weak points where the terrain made construction impossible. Later, the Manchus strolled through an undefended gate in 1644, toppling the Ming dynasty. The wall wasn't a flawless barrier. It was a patchwork of segments, often undermanned, with watchtowers too far apart to relay warnings in time. Why did such an engineering marvel falter? Blame geography and human error. Stretching over 13,000 miles, maintaining its strained empires to bankruptcy. Sections crumbled from shoddy materials. Some Ming dynasty portions used sticky rice mortar, while earlier walls were just packed earth. And then there's the ultimate twist. Recent research suggests the wall's greatest value wasn't military, it was economic. By controlling trade routes and taxing merchants, it became less a shield and more a toll booth, reshaping China's wealth rather than its borders. Today, we remember the Great Wall as a triumph. But its shadows tell another story, one of hubris, suffering, and the uncomfortable truth that even the mightiest monuments can't outwit history's relentless tide. At first glance, Beijing's Forbidden City appears as a sprawling maze of crimson walls and golden rooftops, but every brick, every statue, every step was imbued with layers of hidden symbolism. This wasn't just a palace, it was a carefully crafted mirror of the cosmos, designed to bind heaven, earth, and imperial authority into a single harmonious blueprint. Take the numbers for starters. The complex contains exactly 9,999 rooms. Why not 10,000? Because in Chinese cosmology, only the celestial realm was permitted the perfection of 10,000. The emperor, as the son of heaven, had to remain just one step below the divine. Dragon motifs slither through every corner, not just as decoration but as declarations of power. The emperor's throne sits beneath a coiled canopy of 9 dragons. The number representing supremacy, 9, was the highest single-digit Yong number. Even the golden roof tiles were glazed with a secret mercury-based compound, making them shimmer like the scales of a mythical beast when viewed from afar. But the real genius lies in the orientation. The entire city aligns precisely north-south along Beijing's central axis, a deliberate echo of the pole star around which ancient astronomers believed the heavens revolved. By positioning himself at this earthly equivalent, the emperor became the literal axis mundi, the pivot between realms. Recent infrared scans have revealed even deeper secrets. Beneath the Meridian Gate, archaeologists found hollow chambers filled with bricks inscribed with mantras, likely a ritual to ward off evil spirits, and those iconic marble ramps carved with dragons. They weren't just decorative. The grooves channeled rainwater in specific patterns during ceremonies, turning storms into symbolic rivers of celestial blessing. Even the colors whispered meaning. The dominant red Yong energy and yellow imperial authority were strictly forbidden in commoners' architecture, reinforcing hierarchy through pigment alone. Perhaps most haunting is the Forbidden City's ultimate irony. Despite its name, the palace was never truly forbidden to everyone, just to those without status. Its very design reinforced this duality, with outer courts for public rituals and inner sanctums accessible only to the elite. The deeper you penetrated, the more the architecture tightened like a maze, filtering out the unworthy. Today, as millions walk its halls, they're treading a path meticulously calculated to humble them before the ghost of imperial might. The stones still hum with messages, if you know how to listen. Now shift your gaze upward. Those sweeping, upturned eaves aren't merely aesthetic, they're mathematical marvels. Each curve was calculated using a system called dugong, interlocking wooden brackets that distributed weight so precisely, the structures survived earthquakes for centuries. And here's the twist, the brackets were more than engineering. Their intricate layers symbolized the Confucian social order, each piece supporting the one above, just as subjects upheld the emperor. Even the nails were disguised under decorative caps to avoid reminding the ruler of potential instability. The word for nail sounds like disorder in Chinese. The Forbidden City's greatest secret, it wasn't just built to impress. It was a psychological weapon, using space and symbolism to awe subjects into submission. The raised stairways forced visitors to ascend toward the emperor literally and metaphorically. The courtyards grew narrower as one approached the throne, compressing sightlines to make the ruler appear larger at the climax. This was architecture as theater, a stage where every beam whispered, "Bow." Modern restorers continue uncovering hidden layers. In 2018, workers replacing a ceiling beam discovered 18th century prayer scrolls tucked inside, placed there by long-dead craftsmen as blessings for the structure's longevity. Elsewhere, faded murals revealed erased symbols likely modified when new emperors rewrote history to suit their legacies. The Forbidden City endures not as a relic but as a living puzzle, its true depth still emerging from the shadows of time. The Silk Road wasn't just about exotic spices and shimmering fabrics. It was the internet of its age, a sprawling web where secrets moved as fast as the caravans. Behind the glittering trade in jade and porcelain, a darker game unfolded. Silk-making techniques were guarded like nuclear codes, and merchants doubled as spies in a silent war of industrial espionage. China's monopoly on silk was no accident. It was enforced with brutal efficiency. For centuries, revealing the secrets of sericulture was punishable by death, and the empire deployed soldiers, bribery, and even deception to keep the West in the dark. One of history's most audacious heists unfolded around the 6th century, when Byzantine Emperor Justinian grew desperate to break China's stranglehold. According to Procopius, a Byzantine historian, 2 Nestorian monks volunteered for a near-suicidal mission. Disguised as pious travelers, they journeyed along the Silk Road, hiding silkworm eggs inside hollow bamboo staves. Their success smuggling the eggs to Constantinople changed the course of European history, but China didn't surrender its advantage easily. In response, Tang dynasty officials spread disinformation, claiming silk could only be produced from worms fed on mythical eastern mulberries. The ruse worked for decades, delaying rivals' attempts to replicate the process. The Silk Road spies weren't just stealing technology, they were shaping empires. Arab traders covertly mapped China's paper-making techniques, while Uyghur merchants relayed intelligence about Tang military movements to Turkic khans. Even Marco Polo's famous travels may have had a covert edge. Some scholars argue his detailed accounts of Chinese cities and defenses were too precise for mere tourism, suggesting he could have been gathering intelligence for Venetian or Mongol patrons. What made the Silk Road so ripe for espionage? Geography was key. Its vast, unsupervised stretches allowed messengers to vanish into deserts or blend into crowded caravanserais. Merchants, with their natural cover as neutral traders, became perfect couriers. One surviving document from a Tang dynasty garrison warns officers about foreigners with maps tucked into their boots. Another describes how spies used coded messages woven into rug patterns, a trick later adopted by Mongol scouts. The most surprising twist, China's own spies turned the tables. During the Han Dynasty, imperial agents posing as horse traders infiltrated Central Asian courts to monitor nomadic threats. They returned with more than just intelligence. Some historians believe they smuggled back superior breeds of Fergana horses, revolutionizing Chinese cavalry. The Silk Road wasn't a one-way pipeline of leaks, it was a shadowy marketplace of secrets where every trade could hide a double cross. Even the route's decline reveals its espionage legacy. When maritime trade replaced overland caravans, Ming Dynasty Admiral Zhang He's treasure fleets weren't just diplomatic envoys, they were floating intelligence networks, charting ports from Java to Africa while subtly asserting China's reach. The Silk Road's true currency wasn't silk or silver, it was information, and the empires that mastered its flow reshaped the world. In the rugged hills of Anyang, a tomb was discovered that promised to rewrite history, but nothing about it was what it seemed. Believed to belong to Cao Cao, the ruthless warlord who dominated China's Three Kingdoms period, this burial site was a labyrinth of deception from the moment archaeologists broke ground. The infamous strategist, known for his cunning and paranoia, appeared to have designed his final resting place as one last trick, a puzzle meant to baffle grave robbers and scholars alike. Excavations revealed a tomb fit for an emperor, complete with golden artifacts, jade seals, and inscriptions bearing Cao Cao's name. Yet the deeper researchers dug, the more contradictions emerged. Some chambers were conspicuously empty, their walls scorched, as if treasures had been hastily removed or never placed there at all. Then came the traps, hidden pits, false corridors leading to dead ends, and even decoy burial chambers adorned with convincing but anachronistic artifacts. The most damning clue, a stone tablet declaring the site as Cao Cao's mausoleum, written in a script style that didn't exist until centuries after his death. Historians are now divided. Was this an elaborate ruse to throw off tomb raiders, or did someone else orchestrate the hoax long after Cao Cao's passing? Ancient texts hint that the warlord ordered 72 identical funeral processions to depart from different gates, each heading toward a dummy tomb. If true, the real Cao Cao could still lie undisturbed somewhere in Henan province, surrounded by the unimaginable wealth he plundered during his reign. Meanwhile, modern technology adds another twist. Ground-penetrating radar has detected unexplained voids beneath the excavated site, leading some to speculate that the fake tomb might actually sit atop a deeper, undiscovered crypt. The debate over Qiandao's final resting place isn't just academic, it cuts to the heart of how we remember one of history's most controversial figures. Was he the villainous tyrant of folklore or a brilliant ruler maligned by later dynasties? Even in death, his legacy remains as elusive as his bones. And perhaps that was the point all along, to ensure that the man who famously said, "I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me," would never let history have the final word. Long before emperors ruled from the Forbidden City, before the first terracotta warrior was sculpted, China's origin story begins with a figure shrouded in the mists of legend, the Yellow Emperor Huangdi. Said to have reigned around 2600 BCE, he straddles the boundary between myth and history so artfully that scholars still debate whether he was a flesh and blood ruler, a god, or something in between. What's undeniable is his enduring grip on China's imagination. Even today, he's revered as the ancestor of all Han Chinese, a cultural icon credited with inventing everything from medicine to music, yet whose very existence remains tantalizingly unproven. The contradictions begin with his name. Though called the Yellow Emperor, ancient texts describe him as a warrior clad in bear skins, leading nomadic tribes to victory against rival clans. His legendary Battle of Zhulu, where he allegedly used drums to disorient enemy forces and a compass-like device to navigate fog, reads more like epic poetry than historical record. Yet buried in these fantastical accounts are surprising kernels of truth. The compass may refer to early lodestone navigational tools, while his purported medical treatise, the Huangdi Nijing, remains foundational to traditional Chinese medicine, a text so sophisticated it outlines circulatory theories predating Western anatomy by millennia. Why does this ambiguity matter? Because Huangdi's legacy is less about factual accuracy and more about what his myth represents, a unifying narrative for a civilization obsessed with origins. Later dynasties, particularly the Han, elevated him from tribal chieftain to divine progenitor to legitimize their rule. Emperors claimed direct descent from him, while scholars wove his exploits into Confucian philosophy, framing him as the ideal ruler who balanced wisdom with innovation. Even modern DNA studies play into the lore, with some geneticists suggesting a single Y chromosome haplogroup prevalent in northern China could theoretically trace back to a patriarchal figure from his era. The most fascinating twist lies in his inventions. While Huangdi probably didn't personally create silk weaving or Chinese characters, these attributions reveal how ancient societies credited cultural leaps to heroic individuals rather than gradual evolution. Take writing. Legends claim his court historian Kangji devised characters after studying animal footprints and star patterns, a poetic explanation for a system likely developed over centuries. Similarly, his wife Li Zu's accidental discovery of silk when a cocoon fell into her tea neatly packages the messy reality of sericulture's slow refinement. Perhaps the most poignant evidence of Huangdi's power isn't in texts or tombs, but in ritual. For over 3,000 years, emperors performed solemn ceremonies at his supposed mausoleum in Shaanxi province, even as archaeologists quietly noted the site contained no physical remain. In 2012, the government officially recognized it as symbolic, a place of cultural memory rather than historical fact. Yet every Qingming festival, thousands still burn incense there, honoring not just a man but the idea he embodies, that China's brilliance springs from roots both deep and divine. The Yellow Emperor may dwell in the realm of myth, but his shadow stretches further than any wall or dynasty, proof that some truths don't need evidence to endure. Now consider this: while Western tradition separates history from legend, China's chronicles comfortably let them intertwine. Huangdi's story isn't a lie waiting to be debunked, but a mirror reflecting how civilizations understand themselves. His mythical reign marks the moment chaos gave way to order, wilderness to civilization, a narrative so potent it shaped everything from medicine to statecraft. The real mystery isn't whether he existed, but why his legend proved indestructible. As technological advances allow us to peer deeper into China's Neolithic past, we may never find Huangdi's bones, but we'll keep finding new ways his myth still breathes life into the present. In the early 15th century, while Europe still hesitated at the edges of known maps, a fleet of unimaginable scale dominated the Indian Ocean, not with brute force, but with the quiet authority of silk sails and lacquered hulls. Admiral Zhang He's treasure ships were floating cities, some stretching over 400 feet long, dwarfing Columbus's Santa Maria by 5 times. These weren't just boats, they were diplomatic tools, carrying not just soldiers but astronomers, translators, and even giraffes gifted from African kings to the Ming court. Yet within decades of their final voyage, the empire systematically erased them from history, burning records and dismantling shipyards. Why would China abandon such supremacy? The fleet's reach staggers modern imagination. Zhang He's expeditions visited over 30 territories from Java to Mecca and possibly beyond. A surviving fragment of his navigational charts shows a coastline eerily resembling Australia, centuries before European contact. But it's a cryptic Ming Dynasty text, the Yingye Xinglan, that fuels the most tantalizing theory. Descriptions of a distant land with towering stone temples and people with skin like black jade that some scholars argue could point to pre-Columbian contact with the Americas. The evidence, genetic studies revealing ancient Asian DNA markers in Pacific Northwest tribes, and the similarity between Chinese anchor stones and those found off California's coast. The real mystery isn't the fleet's achievements, it's their deliberate erasure. After Zhang He's death, Confucian officials condemned his voyages as wasteful extravagance, advocating for isolationism. Shipbuilding was criminalized and logs detailing routes were burned, but whispers endure. A single surviving record, the Malkun map, hints at knowledge of the Cape of Good Hope decades before Dyers rounded it. Even the fleet's destruction couldn't erase its legacy. Their astrolabes and sternpost rudders quietly revolutionized global navigation, seeping into European designs through Arab traders. Perhaps the greatest testament to Zhang He's lost fleet lies in what it reveals about power and memory. China could have ruled the waves but chose instead to turn inward, leaving the wreckage of its ambition to fade into legend. Yet in the quiet corners of history, the echoes remain. A porcelain shard in Kenya, a Persian account of floating palaces, and the unsettling possibility that those crimson sails may have glimpsed shores history says they never found. Emperor Yongle should have died triumphant, the visionary behind Beijing's Forbidden City, the man who commissioned Zhang He's treasure fleets, and the ruler who moved China's capital north to assert dominance over Mongol threats. His reign redefined an empire. Yet his final days remain shrouded in whispers and contradictions, a puzzle wrapped in imperial silk. Official records claim he succumbed to illness during a military campaign in 1424, but the details feel convenient. Too neat for a ruler whose life was anything but. Rumors swirled from the moment his death was announced. Some court documents describe a fever, others hint at violent spasms, symptoms suspiciously consistent with poisoning. Then there's the timing. Yongle was deep in the Gobi Desert, pursuing Mongol remnants who'd eluded him for decades when he allegedly fell ill. But why would a 64-year-old emperor personally lead a grueling expedition unless something or someone forced his hand? Historians note his paranoia had reached a crescendo. Years of purging political rivals, executing suspected plotters, and even disfiguring concubines he distrusted suggest he feared treachery from within. The most damning clue lies in what happened next. Within hours of Yongle's death, his inner circle burned his personal papers and altered campaign logs. The official chronicle, the Ming Shilu, devotes just 4 cryptic lines to his passing, a stark contrast to lavish accounts of his life, even more telling. The emperor's chosen heir, his grandson Qiandao, hesitated for weeks before accepting the throne, as if anticipating a challenge. Modern forensic analysis adds fuel to the fire. Toxicity studies of Ming-era poisons reveal that arsenic or mercury, both readily available to court physicians, could mimic recorded symptoms, and Yonggle's ambitious building projects provide motive. The Forbidden City's construction had drained the treasury, while his endless wars alienated scholars and peasants alike. Confucian officials, disgusted by his lavish spending and eunuch allies, had reason to want a less autocratic successor. Yet the truth may be stranger than assassination. Some scholars argue Yonggle's death was staged not by enemies but by the emperor himself. Facing terminal illness or spiritual crisis, he might have orchestrated a warrior's end to cement his legacy. After all, this was a man obsessed with immortality, who built the Forbidden City as a cosmic mirror and dispatched Zhang Heng to find celestial blessings. What if his final campaign wasn't about defeating Mongols, but confronting mortality on his own terms? The greatest irony, Yonggle's demise, however it unfolded, achieved what his life's grandeur couldn't, uniting his critics. His successors dismantled his policies, recalling Zhang He's fleet and shuttering the maritime expeditions that had projected Ming power across oceans. The Forbidden City remained, but as a monument to faded ambition. In death, as in life, Yongle proved that even emperors can't control how history remembers them, especially when the stories smell of conspiracy. Hidden in the crumbling pages of a 2,000-year-old Han Dynasty manuscript lies a formula so bizarre, it sounds like something from a wizard's grimoire. The Huinanzi, a Taoist text compiled for Emperor Liu An, describes robes woven from 5-colored jade and polished bronze mirrors that could render warriors invisible on the battlefield. At first glance, this reads like pure myth until you realize the Han era was also a golden age of optical experimentation, where mysticism and proto-science blurred in ways modern researchers are only beginning to understand. The key lies in how these cloaks were said to work. According to the text, the jade tiles were cut precisely to refract light, while the mirrors were arranged in patterns that distorted the wearer's outline. One passage even details how soldiers trained to move in sync with the shifting angles of sunlight, effectively becoming fleeting shadows. This wasn't magic, it was early understanding of light manipulation. Han artisans had already mastered bronze magic mirrors with hidden designs that only appeared under sunlight, proving they grasped principles of reflection and diffraction. Could their invisibility claims be an exaggerated account of camouflage technology? Taoist philosophy adds another layer. Invisibility wasn't just physical, it symbolized harmony with the Tao, the cosmic flow. Alchemists believed jade purified the soul, while mirrors reflected not just images but spiritual energy. Some scholars argue these cloaks were ritual objects meant to help adepts disappear from malevolent spirits during sacred ceremonies. A surviving fragment from the Baopuzi mentions monks wearing similar garb to evade demons in mountain shrines. The most tantalizing evidence comes from archaeology. In 2018, a Han-era tomb in Jiangsu yielded a shattered bronze disc etched with concentric circles, identical to diagrams in later texts describing light-bending arrays. Nearby lay slivers of nephrite jade drilled with microscopic holes, as if once part of a larger mesh. No intact cloaks survive, but these fragments hint at something extraordinary, an attempt to engineer invisibility centuries before the concept emerged in the West. What's truly remarkable is how this technology vanished. After the Han Dynasty fell, later scholars dismissed the texts as allegory, and the secrets of jade refraction were lost. Yet echoes linger. Ming Dynasty warlords reportedly used mirrored shields to dazzle enemies, while king assassins wore layered silk that blended into twilight. The Han's invisible warriors may have been ahead of their time not by cheating physics, but by seeing its possibilities where others saw only mysticism. Their greatest trick wasn't disappearing, it was making history forget they ever tried. In the gilded halls of ancient China's imperial courts, beauty wasn't just a virtue, it was a lethal obsession. While modern skincare routines focus on health, Tang Dynasty aristocrats willingly slathered their faces with poisons, all in the desperate pursuit of a single ideal: skin as pale as moonlight. The most coveted cosmetic, Xinhuang, was a paste made from powdered realgar, a mineral loaded with arsenic and mercury. Applied nightly, it promised to erase freckles and blemishes, but at a horrific cost. Historical medical texts describe noble women suffering from rotted gums, trembling limbs, and hallucinations as the toxins accumulated. Yet they kept using it because in a world where a concubine's fate hinged on her appearance, death was preferable to obscurity. The madness didn't stop there. During the Ming Dynasty, women tinted their lips with zhu, a vermilion pigment derived from cinnabar, another mercury compound. Records from the Forbidden City's archives reveal eerie accounts of court ladies developing erratic behavior, their once delicate hands now shaking uncontrollably. Some whispered that Empress Wan, a consort of the Chenghua emperor, suffered mercury-induced paranoia so severe she banned mirrors from her chambers, fearing the reflection would steal her soul. Even more chilling, these poison rituals weren't accidents. Physicians of the era actually prescribed mercury-based elixirs as skin brighteners, unaware that their miracle cures were slowly driving users insane. Yet amidst this toxic vanity, nature offered safer alternatives. If you knew where to look, pearl powder, harvested from freshwater mussels and ground into a fine dust, became the secret weapon of savvy courtesans. Unlike mercury, it contained amino acids and calcium that genuinely nourished the skin, leaving it luminous without the deadly side effects. Empress Dowager Cixi famously swore by it, using pearl-infused creams well into her 60s to maintain her legendary complexion. Even the Benkao Gangmu, China's seminal medical text, praised pearls for healing scars and calming inflammation. The irony, while pearls symbolized purity, they were often more expensive than mercury, making them a luxury only the elite could afford. The cruelest twist in this beauty arms race was its gendered double standard. While women poisoned themselves for pale skin, male scholars deliberately darkened their complexions with walnut dye to appear more rugged and scholarly. A Song dynasty proverb even mocked the hypocrisy. Men stain their faces to look wise, women bleach theirs to look dead. This toxic dichotomy reveals a deeper truth, that beauty standards weren't about health but power. Pale skin signaled a life of leisure, no sun exposure, while for men, a tan implied rugged intellect. Both were illusions crafted at the cost of flesh and sanity. Today, traces of this deadly legacy linger. Archaeologists analyzing Ming-era tombs have detected mercury levels in noblewomen's remains up to 50 times higher than normal. Their bones, preserved for centuries, tell a silent story of suffering disguised as glamour. Meanwhile, modern labs confirm what ancient pearl users intuited, that the same mollusk extracts once reserved for empresses now star in high-end skincare for their collagen-boosting properties. The real secret of ancient Chinese cosmetics isn't just their ingredients, but what they teach us about the extremes humans will endure to be seen, and the rare few who dared to choose survival over spectacle. Burned scrolls still smell faintly of smoke centuries later, a ghostly whisper of one of history's greatest intellectual catastrophes. When Qin Shi Huang united China in 221 BC, he didn't just conquer kingdoms, he waged war on memory itself. His infamous decree to burn all non-legalist texts wasn't mere censorship. It was an attempt to rewrite reality, erasing philosophies that challenged his authoritarian vision. Scholars estimate over 460 imperial libraries and private collections were torched, their bamboo scrolls reduced to ashes. But the real tragedy lies in what those flames consumed. Entire schools of thought, poets' voices, scientific observations, gone because one man feared ideas more than armies. Yet whispers of the lost library endure. Fragments survived in the most unexpected ways. Some texts were hidden inside walls or buried in tombs by scholars who risked execution to preserve them. Others were memorized by Confucian disciples and transcribed decades later during the Han Dynasty, though likely altered through generations of oral retelling. The most tantalizing clues come from archaeological flukes. Charred scroll fragments found in Qin-era wells, their ink miraculously preserved by anaerobic mud. Infrared scans of these relics revealed treatises on astronomy, medicine, and even proto-democratic philosophies that praised collective decision-making over imperial rule. One recovered fragment, the Zhaoi Shenki, describes celestial phenomena so accurately, modern astronomers confirmed it tracked Halley's Comet appearances back to 1000 BCE, knowledge Europe wouldn't match for another millennium. What might have been lost forever? Ancient accounts hint at scrolls detailing early chemical experiments with gunpowder components, maps suggesting trade routes to Mesopotamia, and philosophical dialogues between Confucius and now-forgotten rivals. The Siku Quanshu, an 18th-century compilation attempting to recreate pre-Qin knowledge, laments gaps where the first emperor's fire ate the words. But the most haunting absences are the personal ones: diaries, songs, court records that would have humanized an era we now see only through Qin propaganda. The irony: Qin Shi Huang's attempt to control history backfired spectacularly. By destroying rival ideologies, he turned their survivors into martyrs. Confucianism, which he tried to eradicate, became China's dominant philosophy within a century of his death. And those hidden, rescued texts, they proved more resilient than his Terracotta Army ideas. Unlike clay, can't be silenced forever. The emperor's library pyre didn't just destroy knowledge, it illuminated a universal truth: that tyranny's greatest fear will always be the unburnable spark of a single thought. When archaeologists in Hunan province cracked open the sealed tomb of Lady Dai in 1971, they weren't just uncovering a burial chamber, they were staring into the face of a woman who defied time itself. Xin Zhui, the noblewoman also known as the Marquise of Dai, lay submerged in an unknown liquid, her skin still supple, her joints flexible enough to bend, even her eyelashes perfectly intact after 2,000 years. This wasn't mere mummification, it was preservation so flawless. Her veins still held traces of type of blood, and undigested melon seeds were found in her stomach, revealing her last meal. The science behind her condition borders on the miraculous. Her tomb was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, designed to cheat decay at every turn. 4 nested coffins, each tighter than the last, sealed her body in an airtight chamber packed with charcoal and white clay to control moisture. But the real breakthrough lay in that mysterious liquid, a cocktail of mercury and unknown organic compounds that scientists still can't fully replicate. The fluid's pH matched human blood, creating an environment where bacteria couldn't thrive. Even more astonishing, her brain, normally the first organ to liquefy, retained 80% of its original volume, a phenomenon modern embalmers still can't achieve. Yet for all its brilliance, Lady Dai's tomb carried a darkness. Workers who first breached the site reported strange odors and sudden illnesses, fueling rumors of a curse. Ancient texts warned that disturbing Xin Zhui's rest would unleash misfortune, and eerie coincidences followed. One excavator died of a sudden stroke days after handling her remains. Another succumbed to a rare blood disease. Whether superstition or something more sinister, the tragedies mirrored the tomb's own warnings, inscriptions threatening eternal unrest for those who violated its sanctity. The most haunting detail: forensic analysis revealed Lady Dai suffered a grim demise. Obesity, heart disease, and a spinal injury suggest she spent her final years in pain despite her wealth. Scholars speculate her luxurious diet, evidenced by burial feasts of 48 dishes, contributed to her decline. Even in death, her body tells a story of excess and consequence, frozen in time not just by science, but by the very lifestyle that may have killed her. Modern museums now keep her remains in a climate-controlled chamber, a far cry from her elaborate Han Dynasty tomb. Yet after 2 millennia, Lady Di's greatest secret endures, not how she was preserved, but why her technology was lost. No subsequent Chinese mummy matches her condition, as if the knowledge died with her. Perhaps the real curse wasn't supernatural, it was a civilization forgetting its own brilliance, leaving us to marvel at a miracle it once mastered. Imagine a fleet so vast it could blot out the sun, massive treasure ships with 9 masts and decks wide enough to stable horses. By the early 1400s, China's Ming Dynasty navy wasn't just powerful, it was peerless, commanding over 3,000 vessels that dwarfed anything Europe could float. Yet within a single generation, these maritime titans were left to rot in their harbors, their hulls swallowed by mud as China turned its back on the sea. This wasn't just a shift in policy, it was a deliberate unraveling of naval supremacy, so complete it echoes one of history's most perplexing questions. Why abandon dominance when the world was yours to explore? The answer lies in a toxic cocktail of palace intrigue and fiscal panic. After Zhang He's final voyage in 1433, Confucian scholars seized control of the imperial court, branding naval expeditions as wasteful vanity projects. They weren't entirely wrong. A single treasure ship cost the equivalent of 250,000 pounds of rice to build, enough to feed a province for months. But the backlash went beyond pragmatism. Eunuch admirals like Zheng He had risen to unprecedented power through these voyages, threatening the scholar officials' grip on governance. When the Yongle emperor died, his successors faced a stark choice: fund another expensive armada or appease the bureaucrats who controlled the empire's purse strings. The ships lost. What followed was methodical destruction. Shipyards along the Yangtze were dismantled, nautical charts burned, and veteran sailors dispersed to river patrols. The most haunting evidence comes from Nanjing's Longjiang shipyard, where archaeologists found half-finished hulls abandoned mid-construction, their timbers still bearing tool marks from workers who left suddenly. But the real casualty was knowledge. Master shipwrights took their techniques to the grave secrets, like the layered, bulkhead hull design that made Ming ships so resilient. Within decades, the art of building these leviathans was forgotten, leaving later dynasties unable to replicate them even when pirates menaced the coast. Isolationism's cost became tragically clear 3 centuries later. When British gunboats invaded during the Opium Wars, Qing Dynasty commanders scrambled to resurrect China's naval legacy, only to realize they were centuries behind. The Ming's abandoned ships weren't just rotting wood. They were the ghost of a road not taken, a haunting reminder that empires crumble not just from invasion, but from the choices they make in their prime. The ultimate irony: some of Zheng He's ship designs later reached Europe through Arab traders, indirectly enabling the very colonial powers that would humble China. Yet fragments of this lost age still whisper. In 2010, divers off the Kenyan coast discovered Ming-era porcelain nestled in wreckage matching descriptions of treasure ships. And deep in Fujian province, elderly fishermen recount legends of moonlit silhouettes, phantom junks gliding on tides that once carried them to the ends of the earth. The Ming didn't just abandon ships, they stranded a version of history where China ruled the waves, leaving us to wonder what might have been if those sails had kept catching the wind. The battlefield lay eerily silent under the moonlight until the drums began. It was the year 228, and the legendary strategist Zhuge Liang found himself cornered. His Shu Han forces, exhausted and outnumbered by the mighty Wei army, seemed doomed. Then came his most audacious trick yet. As dawn broke, Wei scouts gasped at the sight. row upon row of Shu soldiers standing motionless on the distant hills, their armor glinting ominously. But when the Wei cavalry charged, their swords met no flesh, only bundles of straw lashed to wooden frames, draped in uniforms and propped up like an illusionary legion. By the time the Wei realized the ruse, Zhuge Liang's real troops had vanished into the mountains, leaving behind confusion and a legend that would echo through millennia. This wasn't just battlefield deception, it was psychological warfare elevated to an art form. Historical records like the records of the Three Kingdoms confirm Zhuge Liang's genius for misdirection, but the straw soldier's tale likely grew with retelling. The truth may be even more fascinating. Archaeologists examining why military logs found references to phantom battalions, created not just with straw dummies, but also mirrored shields to multiply reflections, and conscripted peasants ordered to march in looping patterns to simulate larger forces. One account describes how Zhuge Liang timed these illusions with seasonal fog, using nature as his co-conspirator. The real secret behind these tactics wasn't trickery alone, it was an intimate understanding of human psychology. Zhuge Liang knew fear spreads faster than any army. By planting doubt in the enemy's mind, he could paralyze forces 10 times his size. His strategies exploited cognitive biases we now recognize, the tendency to see patterns in randomness, interpreting straw bundles as soldiers, and the illusion of control, making Wei commanders second-guess every shadow. Modern militaries still study his campaigns, noting how his empty fort strategy, leaving city gates open to suggest an ambush, mirrors modern bluffing tactics used in cyber warfare. But what separates legend from history? Recent excavations near the ancient Battle of Jiating uncovered something startling. Bamboo slips detailing why paymaster records that note, reimbursement for straw and bronze mirrors lost in skirmish. This mundane bureaucratic footnote silently corroborates the core of the myth, that Zhuge Liang's forces really did deploy decoys with reflective surfaces. Even his famed mechanical bows, said to fire automatically when tripped, have parallels in Han Dynasty crossbow fragments found with trigger mechanisms capable of delayed release. The enduring power of the straw soldier legend isn't about whether every detail is true, it's about how Zhuge Liang weaponized perception itself. His true brilliance lay in making the Wei army see threats that weren't there while hiding the real dangers in plain sight. In an age before satellites or drones, information was the ultimate weapon, and he mastered its flow. Centuries later, his tactics would inspire everything from guerrilla warfare to modern disinformation campaigns. The ghosts on that battlefield weren't made of straw, they were the illusions every leader fears, the gaps in knowledge where defeat takes root. And in that space between seeing and believing, Zhuge Liang's genius still lives. Dining in the Forbidden City was never just about sustenance, it was a high-stakes ritual where every bite could mean death. While we might fret over a bad restaurant review, imperial chefs faced far graver consequences. A single undercooked dish could cost them their heads. At the heart of this culinary tyranny lay an elaborate web of taboos and safeguards designed to protect the emperor from poison, bad luck, or even the wrath of heaven. Take something as simple as a peach. To us, it's a sweet summer fruit, but in the Ming Dynasty court, it was strictly forbidden. Why? Because peaches symbolized immortality, a divine privilege no mortal ruler dared claim without angering the gods. The obsession with safety reached paranoid extremes. Every meal began with a macabre ballet of poison testers, eunuchs who sampled each dish while scribes recorded their reactions. Historical kitchen logs from the Qing dynasty reveal that some dishes were tasted up to 12 hours before reaching the emperor, left to sit under watchful guards to ensure no delayed toxins appeared. Even the utensils were scrutinized, silver chopsticks that darkened signaled poison, while jade bowls were prized for supposedly cracking upon contact with tainted food. The stakes weren't hypothetical. In 1722, the Kangxi Emperor's own son allegedly tried to murder him via a poisoned birthday cake, leading to a purge of kitchen staff and stricter tasting protocols. But the true horror lay in the kitchen itself. Chefs worked under armed supervision, their ingredients locked in vermin-proof cedar chests. A single error, overcooked rice, undersalted broth, could be deemed treasonous. Records from the Imperial Household Department describe one unlucky cook executed because his roasted duck failed to inspire celestial delight. Others faced mutilation for lesser offenses, like serving fish with imperfectly symmetrical scales. The cruelty had a twisted logic. By making the kitchen a place of terror, emperors ensured absolute obedience, and perhaps distracted from the irony that their divine palates often craved peasant foods like pickled cabbage, smuggled in by daring eunuchs. The most revealing taboo: no emperor could ever finish a meal. Leaving food uneaten was a calculated display of abundance, proof the Son of Heaven lacked nothing. Servants whisked away platters still heaving with delicacies, some destined for privileged nobles, most dumped into hidden pits to rot. Modern excavations near the Forbidden City's old kitchens uncovered middens filled with intact porcelain and bones from rare animals, a grotesque testament to waste institutionalized as power. What's chilling isn't the extravagance, but how these rules warped an entire culture. Regional cuisines abandoned ingredients deemed unlucky in court, like pears, their Chinese name homophonous with separation. Dishes were renamed to flatter imperial ears. Shark fin soup became dragon's wing, while humble tofu was rebranded as jade curd. Even today, echoes linger in banquet traditions where the guest of honor must leave food uneaten, an unconscious homage to long-dead tyrants who turned dining into theater and chefs into prisoners of their own knives. The real poison wasn't in the food, it was the system that made every meal a potential death sentence. Deep in the dusty archives of China's Shang dynasty, lying beneath layers of cracked earth, a farmer's plow struck something strange, not pottery or tools, but bones etched with cryptic symbols that pulsed with the whispers of kings and gods. These weren't mere relics, they were the oldest surviving Chinese writing system, carved onto ox scapulae and turtle shells 3,000 years ago for a singular, spine-chilling purpose: to commune with the divine. Known as oracle bones, they served as the ultimate hotline to the ancestors, a way for rulers to demand answers about everything from harvests to invasions. But what makes them truly astonishing isn't just their age, it's how eerily accurate their prophecies often were. The ritual was as meticulous as it was macabre. Shang diviners would carve questions into the bone: will the harvest flourish? Will the queen bear a son? Before applying scorching rods to create cracks. The pattern of those fractures, interpreted by royal shamans, held the gods' replies. Modern linguists deciphering these inscriptions have uncovered bone fragments predicting military victories down to the number of enemy heads taken, or warning of droughts months before clouds vanished from the sky. One particularly haunting example from the reign of King Wu Ding foretold the collapse of a rival state, its exact phrasing later corroborated by archaeological evidence of that kingdom's abrupt destruction. Yet the bones hid darker secrets too. Some contained diviners' notes, addendums scribbled after events unfolded, essentially editing history to make prophecies seem infallible. A bone might originally read, "If we sacrifice 5 prisoners, the rains will come," only for a later hand to add it rained regardless of whether it actually had. This wasn't just record-keeping, it was early state propaganda, crafting narratives of divine favor to legitimize Shang rule. Even failures were spun as triumphs. When a predicted victory didn't materialize, bones might blame improper sacrifices rather than flawed divination, preserving the illusion of cosmic control. The real breakthrough came in 1899, when scholar Wang Yang recognized the etchings as ancient writing while examining dragon bones sold as folk medicine. His discovery cracked open a window into China's Bronze Age, revealing not just superstition but sophisticated bureaucracy. Oracle bones inventory everything from troop movements to astronomical events, proving the Shang weren't just mystics, they were meticulous administrators. One fragment logs a lunar eclipse so precisely, modern astronomers used it to recalibrate Earth's rotation history. But perhaps the most chilling oracle bone of all lies in the National Museum of China. Dated to around 1050 BC, it asks plainly, will the Shang dynasty end? The answer, preserved in jagged cracks, is ambiguous. Yet within decades, the Shang fell to the Zhou, their bones buried as their rivals rewrote history. In the end, these ancient messages became more than prophecies. They were mirrors reflecting the hubris of power, the hunger to control fate, and the fragile line between divine mandate and dust. Imagine a soccer match where a missed goal doesn't just cost your team points, it costs your head. Welcome to Cuju, the brutal ancestor of modern football that thrived in China over 2,000 years ago. Far from a casual pastime, this high-stakes game was equal parts sport, military drill, and blood sport, where players battled not just for glory but for survival. The rules were simple yet savage. Two teams competed to keep a leather ball stuffed with feathers airborne, using only their feet, knees, or chest, no hands allowed. But while today's players risk yellow cards, Han Dynasty athletes risked execution if they failed to impress the emperor watching from his throne. Archaeological evidence reveals Cuju wasn't just for entertainment. Excavated military manuals from the Warring States period showed generals used it to train soldiers in footwork, agility, and teamwork. The ball itself was a weaponized tool. Some recovered specimens weigh over 4 pounds, forcing players to develop leg strength capable of kicking through armor. Tomb murals depict games played near barracks, with officers observing recruits' performance as a test of battlefield readiness. A Tang Dynasty text even credits Cuju with honing the reflexes of palace guards, who practiced with such intensity they could deflect surprise attacks as effortlessly as a well-placed pass. The sport's darkest chapters unfolded in imperial courts. Emperors like Lai Shimin of the Tang Dynasty transformed matches into lethal spectacles, where losing teams faced execution or exile. One infamous account describes a match during the reign of Emperor Xuanzong, where a visiting Korean team's defeat led to their immediate beheading, their skulls allegedly displayed as warning ornaments near the playing field. But the cruelty wasn't random, it served a calculated purpose. By tying athletic failure to mortal consequences, rulers ensured only the most disciplined and skilled competitors survived, effectively turning Cuju into a Darwinian filter for the empire's finest warriors. Yet beneath the brutality lay surprising sophistication. Han Dynasty rulebooks detail formations mimicking ancient battle tactics, with players positioned like archers, cavalry, and infantry. The best competitors earned nicknames like Iron Ankle or Falcon Knee, their exploits celebrated in poetry. Women weren't excluded either. Tang Dynasty courtesan teams played in elaborate silk robes, their matches gambled on by nobility. The game even had its own superstitions. Players rubbed their boots with tiger bone ointment for strength and avoided eating onions before matches, believing the smell attracted vengeful spirits. The legacy of Cuju lingers in unexpected ways. FIFA acknowledges it as football's earliest precursor, and modern reconstructions show its techniques eerily mirror soccer fundamentals, dribbling, passing, and even early versions of the bicycle kick. But perhaps its most enduring lesson is how quickly entertainment can twist into something darker. What began as military training became a tool of terror, then faded into obscurity when later dynasties deemed it too barbaric. The pitch where warriors once danced with death is now just another ghost in China's long history, one that reminds us how easily games can become matters of life and death when power takes the field. Beneath the tattered sails of the South China Sea, a legend was born, one that would defy every expectation of her era. Qing Shi wasn't just a pirate, she was the undisputed queen of the waves, commanding a fleet so vast it dwarfed most navies of the early 19th century. What began as a desperate escape, sold into prostitution as a child, then married to a notorious pirate captain, became the stuff of nightmares for merchants and empires alike. When her husband died in 1807, she didn't fade into obscurity. She seized control of his entire operation, transforming it into something far more terrifying, a floating empire with 80,000 outlaws, all answering to her alone. Her rule was as ingenious as it was brutal. Qing Shi's infamous pirate code read like a twisted manifesto of equality and terror. Loot wasn't hoarded by captains but distributed evenly, with fines for stealing from the communal stash. Deserters lost their ears, those who had plundered goods faced execution. But her most revolutionary rule, female captives couldn't be assaulted. Any pirate who broke this law was beheaded on the spot, their heads displayed as gruesome warnings. For an era when women had no legal rights, her code was a shocking inversion of power, proving she understood loyalty couldn't be bought, only enforced through equal parts fairness and fear. The Qing dynasty threw everything at her: warships, bounties, even alliances with foreign powers. Yet Qing Shi outmaneuvered them all. She turned the sea's labyrinthine coves into a tactical advantage, ambushing imperial fleets with precision. At her peak, she extorted taxes from entire coastal towns, her black flag more feared than the emperor's edicts, but her crowning achievement, negotiating her own surrender in 1810. Faced with dwindling supplies, she didn't beg for mercy, she demanded amnesty, and she got it. Every pirate under her was pardoned, their crimes wiped clean. She even kept her plundered fortune, retiring as a landlubber who ran a gambling den until her death at 69. The irony is delicious. While male pirates like Blackbeard died in battle or swung from gallows, history's most successful buccaneer died in her bed, her legacy untouchable. Modern archaeologists still trawl shipwrecks for traces of her fleet, but the real treasure is what she left ashore. Proof that even in a man's world, the right woman could rewrite the rules, then sink the parchment in the sea. Legend speaks of 9 bronze cauldrons so powerful, their mere existence could determine the fate of dynasties. Cast in the mists of China's mythical past, the 9 tripod cauldrons weren't just ritual vessels, they were living symbols of the mandate of heaven, imbued with supernatural authority. According to ancient texts like the Zhuozhuan, these cauldrons were forged by Yu the Great after he tamed the floods, each one representing one of China's 9 provinces. But their true power lay in their eerie ability to reject unworthy rulers. It was said the cauldrons would grow unbearably heavy or emit ghostly wails if touched by anyone lacking divine right to rule, a supernatural litmus test for legitimacy that terrified emperors and rebels alike. The cauldron's mystique only deepened with time. Zhou dynasty chroniclers claimed they could cook meals without fire for virtuous leaders, while Han scholars whispered they floated midair during ceremonies to signal heavenly approval. One account describes how the first emperor of Qin, desperate to prove his legitimacy after unifying China, ordered the cauldrons dredged from the Sea River, only for one to vanish into the current, a bad omen that haunted his reign. Modern metallurgists suspect the magic had a cunning explanation. Early alloys with unusual thermal properties might explain the fireless cooking legend, while hollow interiors could have allowed priests to manipulate their apparent weight. But for ancient observers, the line between science and sorcery was thin. Then, around the 3rd century BC, the cauldrons vanished entirely. Some say Qin Shi Huang melted them down to forge weapons, erasing rivals' claims to power. Others believe Zhou loyalists hid them as their dynasty crumbled, scattering them in unmarked graves. The most haunting theory that they still exist buried beneath modern cities, waiting for a ruler worthy enough to unearth them. Recent sonar sweeps of the Yellow River have detected unexplained metallic masses matching their descriptions, but dredging attempts yield only silt and silence. The 9-tripod cauldrons' true legacy isn't in their physical form, but in the idea they embodied. That power must be earned, not taken. Later dynasties crafted replicas, but none could replicate their mysticism. Even today, the phrase "inquiring about the cauldrons" means probing ambitions for the throne, proof that some symbols never fade, even when the metal does. Their disappearance remains history's ultimate power move, the ultimate judge of rulers, slipping through time's fingers like smoke from an extinguished altar. In 1433, the Ming dynasty made a decision that would ripple across continents. They dismantled the greatest fleet the world had ever seen and barred their merchants from sailing beyond coastal waters. This wasn't just a policy shift, it was a deliberate retreat from global dominance, leaving a vacuum that would reshape history. For nearly a century, China's absence from international trade routes became known as the Great Ming Gap, a silent era where lucrative spice routes and porcelain markets suddenly lay undefended. European powers, hungry for a piece of the East's riches, rushed to fill the void with their own rickety caravels. But was this isolation truly a mistake or a calculated move to protect an empire buckling under its own weight? The numbers tell a stark story. Before the Ming withdrawal, Zhang He's treasure fleets controlled over 60% of global seaborne trade, their routes stretching from East Africa to the Persian Gulf. Yet maintaining this supremacy came at a brutal cost. Records from the imperial treasury show naval expenditures consuming 22% of the national budget, enough to rebuild the Great Wall twice over. Worse, the voyages bred corruption. Eunuch admirals entrusted with trade monopolies began skimming profits to build private fortunes, undermining the very system they served. When Confucian scholars gained influence under the Hongxi emperor, they framed naval expansion as reckless extravagance, arguing that China's wealth should be invested inward in granaries, schools, and fortifications against nomadic threats. Europe's opportunism unfolded with startling speed. By 1498, Vasco da Gama had rounded the Cape of Good Hope using maps likely derived from leaked Chinese charts. Portuguese merchants, no longer competing with Ming junks, slapped astronomical markups on Asian goods. Pepper that sold for 1 ducat in Calicut fetched 30 in Lisbon. The Ming court watched this upheaval with eerie detachment. A 1521 edict dismissed European traders as ocean barbarians, their silver ships barred from Chinese ports. Yet this dismissal masked a deeper truth. Isolation had backfired. Without official trade channels, smuggling exploded. By the 1550s, illegal Portuguese outposts in Macau were funneling so much silver into China that it destabilized the entire Ming economy, triggering inflation that would haunt the dynasty's final decades. Scholars still spar over whether the Ming could have maintained their maritime dominance. Some point to the logistical nightmare of policing an empire stretching from Vietnam to the Sahara's edge, a realm too vast to govern without fracturing. Others argue the retreat was cultural, not strategic. Ming elites saw the sea as chaotic and polluting, a realm of pirates and spirits, while land represented stability and Confucian virtue. The fleet's destruction wasn't just budget cutting, it was ideological purification. The cruelest twist, China's isolation may have birthed the very colonialism that later humbled it. With no Ming navy to challenge them, European powers divided Asia like a cake. The Spanish claimed the Philippines, the Dutch seized Indonesia, and Britain's East India Company grew fat on opium profits, all while the Ming and later Qing emperors dismissed these barbarians as temporary nuisances. By the time China reawakened to maritime power in the 18th century, the game had changed irrevocably. The Great Ming Gap wasn't just a pause, it was the moment the world's balance of power tilted westward, proving that in geopolitics, nature abhors a vacuum almost as much as the sea abhors an empty horizon. Yet beneath this narrative lies an uncomfortable counterpoint. What if isolation preserved more than it cost? While Europe plunged into centuries of colonial wars, China experienced unprecedented domestic stability. The late Ming period saw a cultural flourishing. Landmark novels like Journey to the West, porcelain techniques refined to perfection, and agricultural innovations that fed a population boom. The empire collapsed not from external pressure but internal rebellion, a fate that might have come sooner had resources been stretched thinner across oceans. The Great Ming Gap forces us to ask whether global influence is always worth the price, or if sometimes the wisest empires are those that know when to fold their sails. Deep in the heart of Hebei province, archaeologists uncovered a tomb that seemed to defy both time and decay. Inside lay the body of Liu Sheng, a Han Dynasty prince from 2,000 years ago, but this was no ordinary burial. His remains were encased head to toe in a shimmering, scale-like suit meticulously crafted from over 2,400 pieces of jade, each fragment painstakingly threaded with gold wire to form a second skin. This wasn't just an extravagant funeral display, it was a desperate gamble against oblivion. The Han elite believed jade possessed mystical properties, a conduit between heaven and earth that could preserve the body for eternity. Yet what's truly unsettling isn't the ancient faith in jade's power, it's how uncannily these suits resemble the modern body bags used to contain contagion and decay. The craftsmanship behind Liu Sheng's jade armor borders on the supernatural. Each piece was custom cut to fit his body like a three-dimensional puzzle, with larger plaques shielding his torso and smaller slivers contouring to his fingers and face. Historical records describe how artisans polished the jade for months, sometimes years, to achieve a seamless fit. But here's the twist: despite the staggering cost, equivalent to a small city's annual grain output, the suits often failed. Corpses inside decomposed, leaving behind only skeletal fragments tangled in gold thread. The real magic wasn't in preservation, but in the message. By burying their elite in what amounted to celestial armor, the Han Dynasty wasn't just preparing them for the afterlife. They were proclaiming their divine right to rule, wrapping power itself in unrotten stone. Why reserve such extravagance for royalty? The answer lies in a chilling hierarchy of decay. Commoners might be buried with a single jade cicada on their tongue, symbolizing rebirth, but only princes and emperors warranted full suits. It was a brutal visual metaphor. Just as jade outlasts flesh, the ruling class would endure beyond mortal limits. Modern CT scans of Liu Sheng's suit reveal something even darker. The jade pieces around his chest are noticeably thicker, a deliberate reinforcement to protect the heart, believed to be the seat of consciousness. This wasn't just vanity, it was a psychological weapon, reinforcing the idea that nobility transcended death itself. The most haunting parallel lies in the suit's design. The overlapping jade plates, stitched together with precise gaps for flexibility, mirror the construction of today's hazmat containment bags. Both were engineered to create a barrier between the sacred and the profane, whether shielding a prince's soul from corruption or a modern medic from pathogens. Archaeologists note how the Han Dynasty suits even included jade plugs for the ears, nostrils, and mouth, a grotesque foreshadowing of the death masks used during epidemics. The resemblance is accidental, yet undeniable. Across millennia, humans confronting mortality reach for the same instinctual solutions. Liu Sheng's tomb held one final surprise. Nestled beside his jade-wrapped remains lay a crudely carved figurine, a peasant woman made of cheap clay. Unlike the prince, she was given no armor for eternity. This silent juxtaposition speaks volumes. The jade suit wasn't about defeating death, but about who got to pretend they could. Today, these relics endure as ghostly reminders of power's oldest illusion, that wealth can buy immortality, even as the bones inside crumble to dust. The gold threads may tarnish, the jade may crack, but the human fear they exploited, that remains perfectly preserved. At the heart of Chinese philosophy lies a cryptic text so versatile it's been used to predict fortunes, win wars, and even inspire the foundations of modern computing. The I Ching, or Book of Changes, isn't just an ancient oracle, it's a linguistic puzzle, a cosmic blueprint, and a strategic manual all woven into one. Dating back over 3,000 years, its pages contain a binary-like language of broken and unbroken lines, forming 64 hexagrams that represent every conceivable state of existence. But here's what's staggering. This system, devised millennia before Leibniz coined binary code, operates on the same fundamental principle: opposing forces interacting to create infinite possibilities. The I Ching's genius lies in its deceptively simple design. Each hexagram is built from just two symbols, a solid line yang representing force and a broken line yin representing receptivity. By stacking these lines in combinations of 6, the text creates a matrix of meanings, everything from thunder over water, symbolizing crisis, to wind beneath mountain, counseling patience. Modern mathematicians recognize this as a 6-bit binary system, capable of encoding 64 distinct states, eerily similar to how early computers used binary sequences to process information. Leibniz himself marveled at the parallels, writing in 1703 that the I Ching's hexagrams confirmed his theories about universal computation. Yet the I Ching wasn't just about prediction, it shaped empires. Confucius reportedly said he'd give 50 years of his life to master it, embedding its wisdom into his philosophy. Military strategists like Zhu Liang consulted it before battles, interpreting hexagrams to devise tactics. Even Mao, despite rejecting tradition, kept a well-worn copy. Why such enduring influence? Because the I Ching doesn't offer fixed answers. It mirrors life's fluidity. A single hexagram's meaning shifts based on changing lines, acknowledging that truth, like a river, is never static. The most fascinating twist: science is catching up. Quantum physicists note how the I Ching's probabilistic nature resembles superposition, the idea that particles exist in multiple states until observed. Psychologists praise its non-linear approach to decision-making, a counterpoint to Western logic's rigidity. And in Silicon Valley, programmers study it as a precursor to algorithmic thinking, where inputs, coins or yarrow stalks, generate outputs, hexagrams through defined rules. So is the I Ching a sacred text, a proto-computer, or something beyond both? Perhaps its real power lies in refusing to be boxed, a 3,000-year-old reminder that the universe speaks in patterns, and sometimes the oldest codes hold the sharpest keys to the future. And there you have it, 25 astonishing secrets that peel back the golden veneer of ancient China, revealing a civilization far more complex, innovative, and at times unsettling than textbooks could ever capture. From terracotta warriors standing guard in the underworld to emperors poisoned by their own immortality elixirs, from alchemists accidentally inventing chemistry to fleets so vast they could have dominated the globe, these aren't just footnotes in history. They're proof that the past was stranger, darker, and more brilliant than we ever imagined. Think about the sheer audacity of it all: a warlord faking his own tomb to outwit grave robbers for eternity. A pirate queen who commanded 80,000 outlaws and retired unscathed. An ancient seismograph predicting earthquakes centuries before the West understood how the Earth moved. These stories don't just belong to China, they're humanity's shared heritage, reminders of what's possible when ambition, ingenuity, and sometimes desperation collide. So tell us, which secret left you speechless? Was it the Great Wall's hidden toll in human lives, or the submerged city perfectly preserved beneath the lake? The invisibility cloaks woven from jade and mirrors, or the toxic beauty standards that turned faces into poison portraits? Drop your favorites in the comments and let's keep the conversation alive. Because history isn't just about dates and dynasties, it's about the people who dared, failed, and occasionally changed the world without leaving a trace until now. And this is just the beginning. Behind every artifact, every crumbling scroll, there's another story waiting to shake our assumptions. So if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's most mind-bending mysteries, hit that subscribe button. Who knows what we'll unearth next? Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the past is never as simple as it seems.